Have you ever felt that really deep, kind of gut-wrenching fear?
Oh, yeah.
Not just, nerves, but that feeling like everything, absolutely everything you count on is about to just collapse.
Completely. It's like the ground shifting beneath your feet.
Exactly. And the sources for today capture it perfectly. They talk about the heart shaking, like trees whipped around in a storm. Primal fear.
It's such a powerful image, isn't it? And it sets the scene perfectly because that visceral panic, that's the baseline for today's deep dive.
That intense atmosphere, this mix of political crisis and, frankly, spiritual terror, that's our backdrop as we get into Isaiah chapter 7.
And this isn't just, recounting old history. This chapter is dense. It's packed with prophecy, politics, human choices.
Right. And our mission today is to really unpack all of that. We want to look at the geopolitics of the time, understand the people involved, their fears, their failings.
And crucially, dissect the prophecies, especially Immanuel, which has this fascinating dual fulfillment aspect.
Absolutely. And then bring it forward. How does this ancient story speak to us now? To our own anxieties, our own tendencies to look for quick fixes.
To do that properly, we need to detail every person, every place, every significant element, understand why this felt so urgent then to see why it still resonates.
Okay, so let's step back in time. We need to picture the scene. Where and when are we?
We are in the late 8th century BC. Think around 735 down to maybe 732 BC. And the big player, the shadow looming over everyone, is Assyria.
The superpower of the day.
Oh, absolutely. Under Tiglath-Pileser III, they were expansionist, incredibly organized militarily, and frankly brutal. Their whole strategy involved not just conquering, but deporting populations, mixing people up to destroy national identity. Resistance was risky. Paying tribute was often the only way to survive.
And caught in the middle of all this is Judah, the southern kingdom, the house of David.
Exactly. A small kingdom, relatively speaking, vulnerable. And leading them at this critical moment, King Ahaz.
Yes, son of Jotham, grandson of Uzziah. So he's got the lineage. He's sitting on David's throne.
He has the lineage, yes. But as we'll see, he lacks the faith that should go with it. Now, the immediate crisis, the thing causing this heart-shaking panic for Ahaz, isn't Assyria directly knocking on his door just yet.
It's closer to home.
Much closer. It's what's known as the Syro-Ephraimite War. Basically, a coalition of Judah's northern neighbors who were trying to resist Assyria.
Ah, so they wanted Judah to join their anti-Assyrian club.
Precisely. And Ahaz refused. This coalition saw that as a betrayal and maybe even a threat. They needed Judah on their side, or at least neutralize.
Okay, let's name names. Who exactly is in this coalition putting the pressure on Ahaz?
Two main players. First, you have Aram, which is basically Syria. Their capital was Damascus, and their king was Rezin.
Rezin. The name means firm or strong, apparently. Gives you a sense of it.
It does. He sounds like someone who wouldn't back down easily. The second partner is the northern kingdom of Israel,
which the sources sometimes call Ephraim, right, after the main tribe,
yeah.
Or Samaria, after its capital.
Exactly. Israel, Ephraim, Samaria, the northern kingdom, it's all referring to the same entity here. And their king was a man named Pekah, son of Remaliah.
And Pekah. The sources mentioned he wasn't exactly legitimate royalty, was he? He was a usurper. Took the throne by force.
That's a key detail. It tells you these aren't necessarily principal leaders acting out of some grand vision. Pekah seized power violently. They're likely driven by ambition, by political survival, maybe desperation in the face of Assyria. Not exactly noble motives.
So ruthless guys leading this coalition, and Ahaz says no to joining them. Why was Judah so important to their plan?
Strategically, Judah was vital. It provided a buffer zone to their south, protecting their flank from potential Assyrian moves or even Egyptian influence. And crucially, major trade routes ran through Judah, the connection between Egypt and Mesopotamia. Control Judah, you control that economic artery.
So when Ahaz refused, they didn't just send a strongly worded letter, they invaded.
They invaded, and their plan wasn't just to punish Ahaz or force him into the alliance. It was much more radical.
This is where it gets really scary for Judah.
Terrifyingly so. Their stated goal, according to Isaiah, was to dismember Judah, to basically break it apart, vex it, and most critically, to depose Ahaz and install their own puppet king.
Not just any puppet, but someone specific. The son of Tabeel. We don't know much about him, do we?
No, Tabeel is obscure, but the point wasn't who he was, but what installing him represented. It meant overthrowing the legitimate king from the house of David.
It was an attack on the Davidic covenant itself. God's promise that David's line would endure.
Exactly. If Rezin and Pekah succeeded, it wasn't just a political coup, it was a theological catastrophe. It would look like God's promise had failed. So when the text says the heart of Ahaz and his people trembled like trees in a storm, you get it. This was an existential threat on every level.
Okay, so let's zero in on Ahaz himself. He's the king, the decision maker. His reaction is key. What kind of leader was he beyond just being scared?
Well, the historical and biblical accounts paint a pretty bleak picture. He's consistently described as wicked, idolatrous, spiritually weak. This wasn't just a good king having a moment of panic. His baseline was unfaithfulness.
How bad was it? We talked about setting up a few idols on the side.
Far worse. The sources, like 2 Kings and 2 Chronicles, explicitly state that Ahaz engaged in Canaanite religious practices, including the horrific ritual of child sacrifice. He apparently sacrificed his own son in the fire to the Ammonite god Molech.
Wow, okay. That changes everything, doesn't it? That's not just political maneuvering. That's someone in deep spiritual darkness.
It reveals a profound desperation. Someone willing to do that is looking for power and security in the absolute worst places. It shows a complete abandonment of trust in the God of Israel.
So when faced with this Syro-Ephraimite threat, his instinct isn't going to be, let's pray and trust God.
Not at all. His spiritual emptiness directly fuels his political calculation. He's already leaning towards what seems like the smart, pragmatic, worldly solution. Forget the local bullies. Let's make a deal with the real power. Let's appeal to Assyria.
Cut a deal with the devil to get rid of the demons, essentially.
That's a good way to put it. He was seriously considering sending a massive bribe, silver and gold, potentially looted from the temple treasury itself, to Tiglath-Pileser III, asking him to attack Aram and Israel and take the pressure off Judah.
A short-term fix with potentially devastating long-term consequences, inviting the wolf into the sheepfold for protection.
Exactly. And the irony is just dripping when you consider his name, Ahaz.
Meaning he has grasped.
Perfect, isn't it? He's defined by grasping. Grasping at idols, grasping at foreign alliances, grasping at political schemes, grasping at bribes. The one thing he won't grasp is the hand of God offered to him.
It really highlights that psychological response to fear, doesn't it? That desperate need to do something, to seize control, even if it's the wrong thing.
Absolutely. Fear makes us want to control the outcome now. Ahaz's grasping is that impulse writ large on a geopolitical scale. He'd rather rely on the tangible power of Assyrian armies and gold than the unseen promises of God.
So that's the setup. A faithless, terrified king. An immediate, dangerous threat from the north. And the looming, tempting, but ultimately destructive power of Assyria waiting in the wings. Perfect storm.
And right into the middle of this human mess, God steps in. Not with an army, but with a prophet.
God decides it's time for intervention.
Yeah.
He commands Isaiah to go and meet Ahaz.
Yes, but notice where God tells Isaiah to meet him. It's incredibly specific and significant. Not in the palace, not in the council chambers.
Where was it?
God says, go to the end of the aqueduct of the upper pool on the highway to the fuller's field.
Okay, that sounds very specific. Why there? What's the significance of the aqueduct and the fuller's field?
Think about what's crucial during a siege. Water. The upper pool and its aqueduct were vital parts of Jerusalem's water supply system. In the face of an impending invasion, securing water would be paramount. Ahaz was almost certainly out there, inspecting the city's defenses, worrying about logistics, specifically water security.
So God sends the prophet to meet the king right at the physical location, representing his biggest practical fear.
Exactly. It grounds the divine message in the king's immediate, tangible reality. The fuller's field nearby was likely an area outside the walls where cloth was cleaned and bleached, maybe visible from the inspection point, a place associated with mundane work, but also vulnerability outside the city defenses. God is meeting Ahaz right in the middle of his anxious calculations.
And Isaiah isn't supposed to go along. God gives him another instruction.
A crucial one. He tells Isaiah, take your son Shear-Jashub with you.
Shear-Jashub. Now, his name is prophetic in itself, isn't it?
Highly prophetic. Shear-Jashub means a remnant shall return. This isn't just Isaiah's kid tagging along. The boy himself is a walking, living object lesson. A sign before Isaiah even opens his mouth.
What's the message embedded in that name, a remnant shall return? Especially for Ahaz in this moment.
It's a message of both hope and warning woven together. For the people of Judah, terrified of annihilation, it's a promise. God will not allow complete destruction. Even if judgment comes and Ahaz's path is leading towards it, a faithful core, a remnant, will survive and return. God will preserve his people.
But for Ahaz,
it's also a subtle rebuke. It implies that salvation in return will happen for a remnant, suggesting that not everyone, perhaps including the unfaithful leadership, will be part of that future. It hints that God's plan doesn't depend solely on Ahaz's actions. Preservation is promised, but judgment is also possible.
So picture the scene. Ahaz is by the waterworks, probably fretting, inspecting, planning his Syrian appeal. Isaiah arrives with his son, whose name itself carries this complex message. What's the first thing Isaiah actually says?
He cuts right through the panic. The first words are direct commands. Take heed and be quiet. Fear not, neither be faint-hearted.
Basically, calm down. Stop freaking out. Listen.
Exactly. It's spiritual first aid. Center yourself. Stop letting fear dictate your thoughts and actions. Then comes the reassurance about the immediate threat.
He addresses the resin and pica problem.
Yes, and God, through Isaiah, uses this incredible metaphor to dismiss them. He calls these two kings, who seem so terrifying to Ahaz, two smoldering stumps of firebrands.
Smoldering stumps, I love that. It's such a dismissive image.
It really is. Think about it. A firebrand, when it's blazing, is dangerous. But a stump that's just smoldering, it might still look a bit menacing, maybe smoke puffs out, a few sparks fly, but it's essentially burnt out. It's ash. It lacks the fuel to sustain a real fire.
All smoke and no fire, basically. God's perspective is radically different from Ahaz's fear-fueled view.
Radically different. It's a literary device called hypocatastasis, an implied comparison that reframes reality. Ahaz sees raging fires threatening to consume him. God says, no, look closer. They're just dying embers. Their power is fleeting, already spent. They're temporary nuisances, not existential threats from God's viewpoint.
And God backs us up with a direct prophecy about their immediate plan.
Yes, he states unequivocally, their scheme to put the son of Tybil on Judah's throne shall not stand, neither shall it come to pass. Full stop. Immediate relief offered.
But then God pivots to a longer-term perspective, showing he's not just dealing with the present crisis.
Right. He gives a prophecy about the fate of Ephraim, the northern kingdom. Yeah. He says, within 65 years, Ephraim will be broken to pieces so that it will no longer be a people.
65 years, that's quite specific. What's that pointing to?
It points towards the eventual total destruction and deportation of the northern kingdom by Assyria. While the final stages took time, including resettlement policies that erased their distinct identity, God is telling Ahaz, the very nation you fear now, Israel, Ephraim, is already on a trajectory towards oblivion within a couple of generations. They have no lasting future. Why fear dying embers?
So God provides immediate reassurance and long-term perspective, all designed to build Ahaz's faith, which leads to the core challenge.
The absolute linchpin of the whole encounter. Isaiah delivers God's ultimatum. If you will not believe or stand firm in faith, surely you shall not be established or stand firm at all.
Wow, that's blunt. Your stability, your kingdom's survival depends entirely on your faith.
It's a powerful play on words in Hebrew. If you don't stand firm in faith, ta'amenu, you won't stand firm or be established, ta'amenu. Political security is directly tied to spiritual fidelity. Trust God and you'll have a foundation. Rely on your own schemes and you'll have nothing solid to stand on.
It's the fundamental choice laid bare. Faith or fear? Trust God or trust Assyria?
And incredibly, even after Ahaz is clearly leaning the wrong way, God offers him one more chance, an extraordinary chance.
This is the offer of a sign, right?
An unbelievable offer. God essentially gives Ahaz a blank check for a miracle. He says, ask for a sign for yourself from the Lord your God. Ask it either in the depth below Sheol, the grave, or in the height above heaven.
Anything you want. From the deepest depths to the highest heights, just ask, and I'll prove my power to you.
Exactly. God is bending over backwards to bolster Ahaz's weak faith. He's saying, don't just take my word for it if you're struggling. Put me to the test. I want you to have proof so you can trust me. This isn't Ahaz tempting God. It's God inviting Ahaz to receive assurance.
And Ahaz's response is just devastating in its own way.
It really is. He refuses, but he cloaks his refusal in false piety. He says, I will not ask, nor will I test the Lord.
It sounds so humble, so faithful on the surface. Oh, I wouldn't dare put God to the test.
But it's the exact opposite of what God just invited him to do. It's pious hypocrisy. Underneath that religious-sounding language is raw unbelief.
Why refuse? What's the real reason?
He'd already decided on his plan, the Assyrian alliance. Asking for and receiving a sign from God would obligate him to trust God and abandon his own scheme. He didn't want proof of God's power because that would ruin his preferred political maneuver.
It would force his hand.
Exactly. And maybe there's a psychological element too. What if he asks for a sign, commits to trusting God, and then things still go wrong somehow? He'd look like a fool. By refusing the sign, he maintains his illusion of control, keeps his options open, and avoids the commitment that faith requires. It's safer in his fear-driven mind to trust the tangible power of Assyria.
Isaiah sees right through it, doesn't he? The mask of piety slips.
Completely, and Isaiah's frustration boils over. He stops addressing just Ahaz and speaks to the entire house of David, the royal family, the leadership.
What does he say?
His rebuke is scathing. Hear now, O house of David, is it a small thing for you to weary men, that you weary my God also?
Oof. You're not just annoying people with your games anymore, you're exhausting God's patience.
It's a powerful accusation. Your insincerity, your political maneuvering disguised as piety, your refusal to actually trust God, it's trying the patience of heaven itself. And because Ahaz, representing the house of David, refused to ask for a sign.
God says, fine, I'll give you one anyway.
Precisely. Therefore, the Lord himself will give you a sign. God takes the initiative. Ahaz wouldn't choose a sign to bolster his own faith, so God gives a sign that will serve his own sovereign purposes, stretching far beyond Ahaz's immediate crisis.
And this is where we get the famous Immanuel prophecy.
This is the heart of it, Isaiah declares. Behold, the virgin or your woman shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Immanuel.
Immanuel, meaning God with us.
God with us. In the face of Ahaz's fear, his faithlessness, his turning to foreign powers, God's ultimate sign is one of divine presence. It's the profound counter-message to the king's feeling of abandonment and his reliance on human strength.
Now, this prophecy is incredibly rich and, as you mentioned, has a dual fulfillment. We need to unpack both layers carefully. Let's start with the immediate meaning for Ahaz in his time.
Okay. For the sign to mean anything to Ahaz, it had to have a near-term, verifiable component. The prophecy provides that. It describes the child's diet. He shall eat curds and honey.
Curds and honey. We touched on this earlier. It points to a more primitive existence, maybe post-invasion scarcity.
Yes, we'll circle back to that imagery of desolation. But the key here is the developmental timeline marker attached to this diet. The prophecy continues, that he may know, or by the time he knows, to refuse the evil and choose the good.
So before the child reaches the age of moral reasoning, the age where they understand right from wrong.
Exactly. Typically understood to be around 2 or 3 years old. And before that child reaches that age, Isaiah says, the land whose 2 kings you dread will be deserted.
So there's the immediate payoff for Ahaz. Within the next 2 or 3 years, before this specific child grows out of toddlerhood, both Rezin of Syria and Pekah of Israel will be gone. Their threat will be neutralized.
Precisely. It was a concrete, short-term, measurable prophecy. A historical child would be born soon after Isaiah spoke. Maybe Isaiah's own son mentioned later, or perhaps another child known to the court. The identity isn't specified. The point was, watch this child develop. Before he hits this milestone, your current nightmare will be over. God will deliver you from this specific threat.
So it served as a tangible anchor for faith, if Ahaz had been willing to grasp it. But the prophecy clearly resonates far beyond that immediate context.
Immensely so. This is where we get into biblical typology. The near-term fulfillment, the historical child, and the removal of Rezin and Pekah serves as a type. It's a historical pattern, a foreshadowing, that points forward to a greater ultimate reality, the antitype.
In the antitype, the ultimate fulfillment is Jesus Christ.
Unquestionably. The Gospel of Matthew makes this connection explicit. When describing the miraculous birth of Jesus, Matthew quotes Isaiah 7.14 directly.
Matthew 1.22-23. It says, this happened to fulfill what the Lord spoke through the prophet.
Yes. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and they shall call his name Immanuel, which means God with us. Matthew sees Jesus as the true and final meaning of this sign.
And the language difference here is crucial, isn't it, between the Hebrew in Isaiah and the Greek Matthew quotes?
It's very significant for understanding the dual fulfillment. The Hebrew word Isaiah used for the mother is Alma. Alma means a young woman of marriageable age. She could be a virgin, and often was, but the word itself doesn't strictly necessitate virginity. It refers more to her age and social status.
So, for the immediate historical sign for Ahaz, the mother could have been any young woman known to them who conceived shortly after.
Correct. It didn't require a miracle beyond the prophetic timing. However, when Matthew quotes the prophecy, drawing from the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Old Testament, the Greek word used is parthenos.
And parthenos specifically means virgin.
Yes. Parthenos carries a much stronger, more explicit meaning of sexual virginity. For Matthew, the ultimate fulfillment of God with us demanded something unique, something supernatural. Jesus isn't just a sign of God's help, he is God with us, incarnate. The virgin birth underscores the divine nature of this ultimate Emmanuel.
So the initial sign pointed forward, and its ultimate meaning was fully revealed only in Christ's unique, miraculous conception. The type finds its complete meaning in the antitype.
Beautifully put. The historical event was real and significant for its time, but it was also pregnant with a much deeper messianic meaning that could only be fulfilled supernaturally.
And you mentioned Shir-Jashub earlier, Isaiah's son, a remnant shall return. Does his typology also connect to Christ?
I think it does, in a complementary way. The remnant, historically, were those who survived judgment and returned faithfully to God. Christ, in his person and work, embodies the perfect, faithful remnant. He is the ultimate return of humanity to God, the one through whom God brings about the final restoration. So both Isaiah's son and the Immanuel child point towards different facets of Christ's identity and mission.
It's incredible how layered this is. God provides this profound sign of hope, presence, and future salvation.
And immediately pivots to the consequences of ignoring it.
Right. The whiplash is intentional, isn't it? From the height of the Emmanuel promise to the depths of the judgment that Ahaz's chosen path will bring.
Absolutely. Immediately after the Immanuel prophecy, Isaiah lays out the grim future awaiting Judah because Ahaz will choose Assyria over God. He warns that God will bring days upon Judah, Ahaz, and his father's house, such as have not come since the day that Ephraim departed from Judah.
Worse than the civil war that split the kingdom. That's about as bad as it gets in their history.
It signifies utter catastrophe, unprecedented devastation. And the cause, Isaiah names it explicitly, the king of Assyria. The very power Ahaz is about to hire for protection will become the instrument of Judah's suffering.
The cure becomes the disease. The hired bodyguard turns into the brutal oppressor.
Exactly. Ahaz's pragmatic solution, his rejection of faith, will backfire spectacularly. Seeking Assyria's help will lead to vassalage, crushing tribute, loss of independence, and ultimately immense destruction and humiliation. The short-term relief comes at an unbearable long-term cost.
Isaiah then uses these incredibly vivid metaphors to describe the coming invasion, the instruments of God's judgment.
They are terrifyingly graphic. God says he will hiss or whistle like summoning insects for two devastating forces.
Who are they?
First, the fly that is at the end of the streams of Egypt. Second, the bee that is in the land of Assyria.
A fly and a bee. What does that imagery convey?
The fly, associated with Egypt perhaps, suggests something numerous, pervasive, annoying, maybe symbolizing swarming armies that are hard to get rid of, constantly buzzing around. But the bee, representing Assyria, is different. Bees are organized, they swarm with purpose, and they sting painfully, dangerously. Assyria is the real deadly threat here. God is depicted as effortlessly summoning these world powers like pests.
And where will these flies and bees settle?
Everywhere. Isaiah says they will come and settle in the desolate valleys, in the clefts of the rocks, on all thorn bushes, and on all pastures. There's nowhere to hide.
It's total infestation. Complete occupation. Not just a military defeat, but a pervasive presence that infiltrates every part of the land, every corner of life.
It paints a picture of inescapable judgment, of feeling overwhelmed and suffocated by the consequences of the nation's choices, led by Ahaz. It's a chilling image of what happens when the hedge of protection is removed.
But maybe the most striking, most humiliating metaphor is the next one. The hired razor.
Ah, yes. This one cuts deep, literally and figuratively. God says, "In that day the Lord will shave with a razor that is hired beyond the river with the king of Assyria, the head and the hair of the feet, and it will sweep away the beard also."
Shaving the head, feet, and especially the beard. What did that signify in that culture? It sounds deeply shameful.
It was the ultimate humiliation for a man in the ancient Near East. The beard in particular was a symbol of honor, maturity, strength, virility, and status. To have your head and beard forcibly shaved was to be stripped of your dignity, to be treated like a slave or a disgraced captive. It was a public marking of utter defeat and powerlessness.
Shamed, exposed, denuded, powerless.
Exactly. And the theological irony is brutal. The razor is hired. The very power Ahaz paid, or planned to pay, to protect him, Assyria, is the instrument God uses to inflict this total humiliation. God effectively says, you wanted to hire Assyria, fine, I'll hire them too to shave you bare, to expose the shame of your faithlessness. Your own chosen solution becomes the tool of your disgrace.
The consequences aren't just political or military. They impact the land itself, transforming it.
Yes, the judgment manifests physically. The prophecy describes a land reverting to wilderness. Where fertile vineyards once flourished, now only briars and thorns will grow. People will need bows and arrows just to go there, perhaps for hunting or protection against wild animals reclaiming the desolate land.
It's agricultural collapse, mirroring the spiritual collapse.
Precisely. The land's fertility was tied to covenant faithfulness. Rejecting God leads to barrenness, both spiritually and physically. The landscape itself reflects the state of the people's heart, choked, unproductive, wild.
And this leads back to that phrase about eating curds and honey. It's not a good thing here, is it?
No, in this context, it's deeply ironic and signifies scarcity, not abundance. The original promise was a land flowing with milk and honey, representing agricultural prosperity, cultivated bounty.
The result of God's blessing and settled civilized life.
Exactly. But after the Assyrian invasion devastates the agriculture, destroys the vineyards and fields, what's left? Survival depends on the wild. Curds come from the few remaining livestock foraging in the now wild landscape, and honey is gathered from wild bees in the rocks and thickets. It's the food of pastoral nomads or people living a primitive, hand-to-mouth existence.
It's the opposite of the promised land's abundance. It's survival rations in a ruined land, the bare minimum left over when cultivation fails.
It signifies a regression, a loss of the blessings of settled life, all stemming from the initial failure of faith and the choice of a disastrous worldly alliance.
The sources push us to see a parallel here, don't they? Between the land becoming a wilderness and our own inner lives.
Yes, it's a powerful metaphor. If we consistently choose fear over faith, if we rely on our own Assyrian quick fixes, whether that's unhealthy relationships, career obsession, addictions, political idolatry, instead of trusting God's ways, our own hearts and minds can become like that desolate land.
Overrun with the briars and thorns of anxiety, bitterness, cynicism, toxic thoughts.
Exactly. Without the cultivation that comes from spiritual discipline, trust, and ethical living grounded in faith, the inner landscape can revert to a wilderness. We bear the wrong kind of fruit. Ahaz's national disaster becomes a picture of potential personal, psychological, and spiritual decay.
Okay, so let's synthesize this. We've seen the crisis, the failed leadership, the divine intervention, the dual prophecy, the devastating consequences. How do we apply this timeless drama of Ahaz's failure today?
Well, the core conflict is evergreen: faith versus fear. Ahaz represents that part of us that, when squeezed by crisis, defaults to human solutions, to grasping for control, even if it means compromising our deepest values or inviting worse problems down the road.
His pragmatism was his downfall. He thought he was being realistic, but he was actually being faithless.
And that leads us to identify our own Assyrias. What are the powerful worldly forces or quick fixes that we are tempted to hire when we feel threatened or insecure?
It could be anything, really. Putting all our trust in financial security above everything else, relying on political ideologies to give us all the answers, using technology or substances to numb anxiety, unhealthy dependencies in relationships.
All of the above. Anything we elevate above reliance on God and his principles, especially when motivated by fear, can become our Assyria, the thing we trust for immediate relief, but which ultimately might shave us bare, leaving us diminished or compromised.
And it highlights the danger of short-term fixes in general. Ahaz got what he wanted initially. Rezin and Pekah were dealt with by Assyria, but the long-term cost was catastrophic.
It's a classic pattern. Our modern shortcuts, the quick fix for loneliness, the easy way out of an ethical dilemma, the avoidance of difficult conversations often breed deeper, more complex problems later. We trade lasting peace for temporary comfort.
But the chapter doesn't leave us in despair. It offers the profound counter-narrative. Emmanuel, how does God with us speak directly to our modern anxieties?
It's the ultimate anchor. In a world grappling with global pandemics, political polarization, economic uncertainty, personal struggles, the promise embedded in Immanuel is that we are not alone. God's presence, ultimately embodied in Christ, is the fundamental reality that transcends crisis. That knowledge shifts our reliance away from fragile human systems or our own inadequate resources.
And the presence of Shir Jashub, the remnant, also has a powerful message for today, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's a call to faithfulness even when it feels like you're in the minority. In times of cultural confusion or decay, God always preserves a remnant. It encourages you, the listener, to be part of that core, to maintain integrity, to persevere in faith, regardless of whether it's popular or seems effective in the short term. The remnant isn't defined by numbers, but by fidelity.
And perhaps the biggest takeaway, the greatest comfort, is God's sovereignty throughout this whole messy story.
Yes, despite Ahaz's spectacular failure, despite his faithlessness leading to judgment and humiliation for Judah, God's ultimate plan wasn't derailed. The sign of Immanuel wasn't just for Ahaz, it was God sovereignly declaring his intention to preserve the line of David and bring the Messiah into the world through that line, regardless of human failing.
So even in the midst of chaos, caused partly by human sin and fear, God's larger purpose prevails.
That's the bedrock of comfort. Our mistakes are real, their consequences can be painful, but they don't get the final word. God's redemptive plan, centered on Immanuel, ultimately triumphs. Knowing that allows us to release that desperate Ahaz-like grasp for control.
So we've journeyed through the political storm of the 8th century BC, met the key players like Ahaz, Rezin, Pekah, and the terrifying Assyrians. We've unpacked the dual nature of the Immanuel sign and seen the stark consequences of misplaced trust depicted through images like the hired razor in the desolate land.
From the shaking heart to the smoldering stumps, from the blank check miracle refused to the sovereign sign given, it's a chapter full of powerful contrasts.
And it leaves us with a final thought to ponder. A challenge, really. Reflect on this. What are the smoldering firebrands in your own life right now? What fears, what worldly threats, what anxieties are you perhaps overestimating, allowing them to loom larger than they really are?
And how might those inflated fears be distracting you, pulling your trust away from the ultimate, enduring security offered through Immanuel, the ever-present reality of God with us?
That's the question to grapple with. Where does your trust truly lie when the storm hits? Faith or fear?
It always comes down to that choice.
Join us next time on The Deep Dive as we continue to explore these rich and relevant texts.